Good morning. I'm going to try reading from you outside. It seems like every time I try and do this, the lawnmower start up, but we'll see what happens here. Remember, we just found out in the middle of the last chapter that Connor and Alex's mom is about to get married. So there's a proposal coming from Bob, I think, in this chapter. It was hard for the twins to focus on anything the following week. The looming Thursday stood out like a bookmark page in their future. The closer it got, the more anxious they became. Alex and Connor didn't know why they were so nervous. After all, they weren't asking anyone to marry them. But in a strange way, Bob was marrying them too. And as apprehensive about it as they were, the twins started to feel excited about Bob joining their family. Connor was really looking forward to having another man around the house. As much as he loved his mom and sister, he did miss having someone else there who appreciated the comedy in a bodily function. He wrote a short story in his English class that week about a family of trolls whose mother was engaged to an ogre. It wasn't the most flattering depiction of any of them, but it was quite therapeutic for him. He drew little sketches in the margins of his paper. The troll children looked very much like him and his sister. The one based on Alex even had a headband in front of her horns. Alex found Connor working on this story one afternoon after school. She'd never seen him look so devoted to something before. "What's this?" Alex asked him. "Oh, it's nothing," Connor said, just a little bit embarrassed. He still hadn't talked to her about his meeting with Mrs. Peters. "It's just some creative writing for English." "That's nice." "Wait, is that supposed to be me?" Alex said, and then pointed to the sketch. "Oh, not at all," Connor said. "What would make you think that?" Because it says supposed to be Alex underneath it," she said, kind of annoyed and offended. "That's so rude, Connor. How old are you?" Connor guiltily looked up at his sister. "There's something I forgot to tell you," he said. "I've sort of been writing about the two of us a lot in my English class." Is she going to be okay with this? "What do you mean?" Alex asked. "About our adventures in the fairy tale world," he said. "They've made for some really great stories, and that's why Mrs. Peters called me into her office the other day. She really liked them and wanted me to consider being a writer. She said I may have what it takes, whatever that is." And then he paused. "Thoughts or concerns?" Alex blinked twice. "I think that's a wonderful idea." She said, and Connor sighed with relief. "Why didn't you tell me this a little bit sooner?" "Oh, I was just worried that you wouldn't want me spreading our business around," Connor said. "You're kind of the co-owner of our experiences, you know." "On the contrary," she said, "I think they should be told. We saw so many things and met so many people. It would be a waste to keep them all to ourselves. Dad would be so proud of you." At this, Connor smiled to himself. He hadn't thought about that. "Really?" he asked. "You think so?" "Absolutely," Alex said. "He'd be happy the storyteller gene went on to one of us. And I've always tried telling and retelling stories, but you're so much better at this than me. You're funny. People like listening to you." Connor shrugged. "Aw, shucks," he said. "But I'm not going to argue." He pulled out the stacks of his stories to share with her. "This one is about Trixie's trial, and this one is about Troll Bella giving freedom in exchange for a kiss. Wish I could forget about that. This was my first one, about the Kirby tree. But I was super paranoid people would find out it was true. So I changed it to the Kirby giraffe. It doesn't make much sense, but oh well, I'm just learning." "This is great, Connor," Alex said. "Really great." Connor grinned from ear to ear. He believed her much more than he believed Mrs. Peters. Her approval gave him the validation he needed to believe in himself. Alex flipped through her brother's stories. She smiled and laughed as she scanned through them, remembering the events that they were based on. "Oh dear," Alex said, looking up from the papers, a fresh thought behind her eyes. "Bob, are we going to tell him?" Are we going to tell him who Grandma and Dad really are? Connor couldn't answer this. The thought hadn't crossed either of their minds till now. It crossed my mind. Had it crossed yours? Anyway, how were they going to share their family's biggest secret with Bob? Should we tell him? Connor asked. We probably should, in case Grandma ever shows up with an elf or a fairy on our doorstep, Alex said. Connor looked off into the distance. Gosh, who are we? He said. What other family has a problem like this? Most skeletons in the closet don't have wings. I imagine he'll have a lot of questions either way, Alex said. Then she let out a really long sigh. But it's not like it's really relevant anymore. It may be pointless to tell him we have ties to another dimension if we don't go to interact with it ever again. Guess we'll just have to play it by ear, Connor said. It may be a good excuse to have in our back pocket for when we get older. Well, we could tell Bob we're going to the fairy tale world and then go to a party instead. Alex tilted her head and looked at him curiously. Why would we ever choose a party over the fairy tale world? Connor just shook his head. Just for once, he wished his sister would think like a normal teenager. I keep forgetting you're an 80-year-old trapped in a 13-year-old body, he said. Never mind. The end of the week slowly arrived, and the twins woke up to a beautiful Thursday morning. They gave their mom extra hugs just before they left the house, causing her to raise a suspicious eyebrow at them as they headed to school. Alex and Connor felt like the day passed by extremely slowly. They glanced up at the clock every 5 minutes only to be disappointed that it hadn't changed much. As soon as school ended, though, Connor ran home and met Bob at the house to help prepare for the night. He cut corners over his neighbor's lawns and was so careless he nearly tripped over a lawn gnome. Alex was too antsy to enjoy her honors course or be sleepy on the train ride back. She just wanted the night to be perfect for her mom. Are you so relieved that the kids are on board with this? Like, this is going to be a great evening, right? So she just wanted the night to be perfect for her mom. And from the looks of things, when Alex finally got home, it was going to be awfully close to perfect. The kitchen table had been covered with a silk cloth, and there were candles placed in the center. A bottle of champagne and a bottle of cider were on the table as well, begging to be opened for a celebration. The whole house smelled delicious, as Bob had picked up food from Charlotte's favorite Italian restaurant. He was dressed in a very nice suit and tie and held the box tightly in his hand, afraid to let it go. Even Connor had dressed up, putting on his best button-down shirt. Alex tried putting a bow on Buster's collar, but he just wouldn't let her. The dog had been acting strange for a couple of days. He stayed seated by the front door and growled at it occasionally. I feel like maybe that could be more. The twins figured a new cat must have moved into the neighborhood, or maybe their jitters were rubbing off on him. But aside from the dog, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Alex ran up to her bedroom and dressed in a skirt and her nicest headband. She came downstairs at 6:30 and joined Bob and Connor at the table. Mom should be here any minute, Connor said. Come on, let's make this proposal quick. Bob, I'm starving. I'll do my best, Bob said. He kept looking down at the ring. As excited as the twins were, they knew it was nothing compared to what Bob was feeling right now. They couldn't wait for her to walk through the door and see them waiting for her. Alex hoped her mom wouldn't cry too much, because then she might start crying as well. Connor hoped Alex wouldn't start crying, because then he might start crying, and there was no dust to blame it on. Remember the fairy dust that made him cry before? Okay, so unfortunately, Charlotte was running late, so the three of them were forced to wait. They waited, ... and waited, ... and waited some more. More than an hour had passed after the time she was supposed to be home. Do you think we should call her? Connor asked. Maybe we should give her a ring to see where she is. Get it? Get it? No, don't, Alex said. She can't suspect a thing. So after another hour, the twins' anticipation turned to anxiety. Bob decided to put the food away so it wouldn't go bad. I guess Nurse Nancy is being very thorough, Bob chuckled. She's probably making sure your mom doesn't get here too early. But the twins weren't laughing. The last time they'd waited this long for a parent, they lost one. Their dad. I'm going to give Nancy a call, Bob said, after even more time had passed, so he dialed his colleague at the children's hospital. Hello? Nancy? Hi, it's Bob. I'm here with the kids. Has Charlotte left yet? Alex and Connor leaned in towards him. They could barely make out what Nancy was saying on the other line. From what they could hear, she sounded surprised. Well, she left 2 hours ago? Bob said into the phone. Are you sure? Because we haven't heard anything from her. Alex and Connor were exchanging very fearful thoughts at this. Mom's never late like this, Connor said, shaking his head. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Something has happened. He quickly dialed Charlotte's number next. He didn't make eye contact with the twins, not wanting to add to their concern. Bob tried calling several times. No luck. Oh, wow. Guys, what could this be? She's not answering, guys, Bob said. Do you think she spontaneously decided to run errands tonight? Alex was worried sick and started to burst into tears. We've got to call the police, she said. The police wouldn't do anything unless she'd been gone for 48 hours, Bob said. Come on, let's not panic. Not yet. Connor jumped up from the table and paced around the room. There's got to be something we can do, he said. I'm going to get on my bike and go looking for her, Alex said. I'm going to go with you, Connor announced. Nobody's going anywhere, Bob said calmly. Although the twins knew he was just as stressed out as they were, we've tried calling the hospital and her phone. Come on, let's wait for a few more minutes just in case she tries to call us back. Alex's tears began to flow faster the more she worried, and it was absolutely impossible not to. The twins feared that their history, was repeating itself. But then Buster suddenly started a barking frenzy. He was staring intently at the front door, jumping up, scratching it, growling as loudly as he possibly could. The twins had never seen anything like this before. Buster, what is it, boy? Bob said. Is someone at the... And of course, the doorbell rang. All of them, including the dog, completely froze. It rang twice before any of them could move. Everybody, I think, is anticipating somebody at the door. Who do you think it is? Who could that be at this hour? Bob asked and went to answer the door. The twins followed him into the doorway. They almost wished he just wouldn't answer it. Ooh, does that come back to the knowing is worse than not knowing that we had in another book? Well, whatever, or whoever it was really late to be anything good. So Buster began another barking and jumping fit. Buster, get down, boy, Bob told him. The dog backed away from the door and stood directly in front of the twins, protective of them. He was ready to pounce on something in an instant if he didn't like the looks of it. Was he sensing something that they couldn't sense? Well, Bob looked back at the distressed twins. It's going to be all right, kids, he said calmly. Whatever happens, just know it's all going to be okay. Bob slowly opened the front door. He peeked out onto the porch. Seemed empty. Hello, he said. Still, there was nothing and nobody to be found. Hello, Bob tried again. Is anyone out there? Seize him! In a split second, a dozen soldiers dressed in silver armor barged through the door. One slammed Bob hard against the wall. Alex screamed. Connor grabbed her arm, and they tried to run to the other side of the house, but the soldiers formed a tight circle around them and Buster. Their swords were drawn. They held heavy shields with small glass slippers displayed on the outside crest. The twins recognized these soldiers immediately. They were from the Charming Kingdom. But what in the world were they doing here, in this world? Get your hands off me, this instant, Bob yelled, struggling under the soldier's restraint. Get away from the kids. Who are you people? We've securely surrounded the twins, the soldier closest to Alex called to the open front door. Bring in the fairy godmother. Okay. Alex and Connor looked to each other as fast as they could, and their necks hurt. Fairy godmother? They said in unison. 2 other soldiers quickly charged into the house, led by none other, Grandmother. Grandma! The twins gasped together. They almost didn't believe their own eyes. She looked exactly the same as she did the last time they saw her. She was dressed in her long sky blue robe that sparkled like the night sky. Her hair was styled up with beautiful white flowers in it. She raised her crystal wand authoritatively as she walked into the house. The twins had never seen her, though, so worried. Oh, thank heavens, Grandma said. The soldiers parted their circle for her, and she threw her arms around Alex and Connor. You have no idea how happy I am to see you, Grandma said, hugging them so tightly they felt like they were going to pop. The twins didn't hug her back. They couldn't believe they were seeing her in real life. Their heads were spinning with so many questions, but they only managed to spit out the basics. Grandma? Is it actually you? Where have you been? Their grandmother gently placed a hand on each of their faces. I am so sorry I've been gone for so long, she said very sorrowfully. I promise to explain everything later. So she took a moment just to look at them through teary eyes. They knew she had missed them as much as they had missed her. Just look at you two. You've both grown a foot since the last time I saw you, Grandma said. But just then, a familiar man walked through the front door. He had a very distinguished jawline and wore a bright yellow suit. Who is it? Well, to Bob's amazement, the man's shoulders and his hair were actually on fire. The twins recognized him instantly. It was Xanthias, the only male fairy on the fairy council. I checked around the property, he said. It's clear. Xanthias, Alex said. What's he doing here? Bob fought restlessly under the soldier pinning him to the wall. What is going on? He yelled. Who are these people? Grandma raised her wand in his direction, and Xanthias pointed a few fingers at him, and his whole hand suddenly lit on fire. Both were ready to fight if it was necessary. Do you know this man? Xanthias asked the twins. Yeah, that's Dr. Bob, Connor said. Please don't set him on fire. That's our mom's boyfriend. Boyfriend? Grandma said, and lowered her wand. Well, I must have been gone for longer than I thought. Release him, Xanthias ordered and lowered his hand. The soldier immediately dropped his hold on Bob. This woman, she is your grandmother? Bob asked the twins. Is she part of the circus or something? What's with all the tricks and costumes? What on earth is a circus? Xanthias said, unsure whether he should maybe take offense to this. Alex and Connor really didn't know where to begin. Bob, it's a really long story, Alex said. In a nutshell, our grandmother is Cinderella's fairy godmother from the fairy tale world. I know it's a lot to process, so please take your time with this, Bob, but we promise that's the only baggage our family has. Bob's eyes grew bigger, and he glanced at the soldiers and at their grandma and at Xanthias. Uh-huh, Bob grunted, completely not convinced. Their grandmother looked around the living room, gravely concerned. Where is your mother? She asked. That's it. We don't know, Connor said. She was supposed to be home a few hours ago. Grandma, what's wrong? Connor asked. Do you know where Mom is? Their grandmother didn't answer, staying deep in thought. Grandma, what is happening? Alex demanded. We haven't seen you in over a year, so why have you suddenly shown up out of the blue? You have to tell us what's going on. Where's Mom? Their grandmother looked back and forth between them. Children, what I'm about to tell you is going to seem very frightening, she said, but I need you to be strong and trust that many qualified people are handling the situation. The twins nodded impatiently. Any news was better than no news. Or is it? I believe your mother has been kidnapped, Grandmother informed them. They were wrong. Having no news was much better than this knowing. We were right. All right, I'm going to stop there. That is the end of chapter 5. Chapter 6 has a bunch of gnomes in it. So I think we are headed back to the fairy tale world. All right, have a good afternoon.